Welcome to the Encouragement Engineering Podcast. We help people to combat the negativity that inundates their daily lives with a positive perspective and positive action. Today's guest is Steven Rudolph. In 1989, while pursuing a career in music in New York, Steven Rudolph took up a part-time teaching job to make ends meet. In his first class, he had an epiphany that he had an innate capacity to teach. Though he had no formal training, it was as if he already knew how to do it. This realization led him on a 21-year quest to India, where he uncovered 5,000-year-old secrets to self-understanding and achieving one's potential. He later found the same discoveries made by the ancients about human nature were consistent with what modern neuroscientists had to say about how the brain functions. Steven has crafted those principles into an easy-to-use, enjoyable program, Feed Your Tiger. Steven lives in Cambodia, where he serves as a CEO of Multiple Natures International and explores how ancient Eastern wisdom can help people and their tigers become more aligned. So please welcome to the show, Steven Rudolph. Steven, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Bob.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Well, why don't we give people the introduction about you? We went over your bio, but tell us a little bit more how you got to where you are. I mean, that's an interesting bio.
Yeah. Well, it started out with my wanting to be a rock star. That was kind of like where everything began for me. And I think many people can relate to that. You know, you go back to your earlier years and you might have wanted to be something and you see where you are now. And sometimes you find, in most cases, what I see is that people went into a completely different direction. And so I had this dream, that's where I was going to go. And when I found that first job teaching, it was, I lit up. I just absolutely lit up from that experience. And I said, this is really what I was meant to do. And so, I wanted to make a school because I got a little indignant, right? I was 21 at the time or 22. Yeah, 22 when I had that experience. And I was like, how come no one in school ever told me about that? Like, how is it possible? I went through 18 years of formal education and this was never made clear to me.
Yeah.
And so I then took that energy and said, all right, now I'm going to do something. I'm going to make a school and like every kid's going to know who they are. So this is me at 22, right? Idealistic and wanting to change the world. And so timing was just right. A friend of mine was in India and he's like, hey, don't open up that school in New York. Come to India and open it up here. And I was like, oh my God, how would that be? And that's kind of what I did. So,
wow.
I was in Japan for a couple of years. I got more experience. I got a master's in education while I was there from Temple University. They have a branch there in Tokyo. And then I moved to India in 94. And we didn't have enough money for like a school building and, like for even renting one. And so with my friends in our house, we started the school. And so on the first day, it was 8 kids. It was kindergarten through grade 3. There were not too many kids per grade and 3 teachers. Well, P.S. that school has like 2,000 kids today.
Wow.
And so eventually when we hit about 175 kids in our house, we finally realized, all right, this has got to change.
We need bigger space.
so it sort of went on like that. And what happened along the way was that I was interested to help the kids figure out, based on what it was that I had proposed to do, to figure out who they were. And I was looking for models, and being in India, I looked into the traditional literature, some of these ancient texts. One of my colleagues was a Sanskrit PhD, and another was an expert in Ayurveda, which is kind of like what Chinese medicine is to China, Ayurveda is to India. So it's like this indigenous medical practice that's been going on for thousands of years. So I asked both of them to help me understand what the ancients said about human potential. You have to figure that over the course of millennia, people have figured something out. And so that led me to take those ideas and then to create a system to help my own students in my school figure out who they were and then where they would go once they graduated. And then from there, I went to other schools throughout India. And eventually people were saying to me, hey, why don't you come to the States, or why don't you come to Europe? And we need this stuff here too. So in 2015, I left India, and then I began to share my concept, which I call Feed Your Tigers, with people in other parts of the world. So there are about 200,000 people who've been touched by the concept so far. So
that's great. That is great because you're right. In school, it's like they want to teach you a curriculum and that's their focus. They forget that we're people first. and,
Right.
we can go any direction. And what's that, opportunity each individual person may have, finding that yourself, I think is critical. That's a great scenario. Why the tigers though? Why do
Yeah.
why? That's an interesting
Uh,
concept. What does that mean for people?
so it's something like this, that we all have natural propensities to do things. Some people have a natural propensity to create. It could be creating music or art. Some people have this natural propensity to teach or to explain things. Like that's one of the things that I discovered about myself. Some people have this tendency for taking risk and doing like dangerous things, whether it's physical danger or like investing in cryptocurrency, which is also risky, right? Some people have this tendency to entertain and to be funny, and they can't stop themselves. It's natural for them. And those tendencies, those abilities develop when we're really young. In the first 7 years of life, when we as these little creatures, we have to figure out what works for us in terms of our survival. We underneath all of this, underneath our cortex, neocortex, and our limbic system, we still have this reptilian brain. We're very much mammals looking to survive and to perpetuate our genes or our legacy or something like that. And so we learn through experience that what is good for us. When we do something, people clap or they praise us or they hug us or so when we do things like that as little kids, like, oh, when I play this musical thing, mom and dad clap their hands and they whoa and they make kinds of noises. So if I do this more, I'm going to get more, maybe they give me a cookie or maybe, it's so we learn, or maybe a parent is very organized. And when you keep your room straight and neat, they express their love and their satisfaction with you. So depending upon what environment we were exposed to when we were young, we develop these propensities. And in the brain, what happens is the neurons in our brain get myelinated. And so up to age 7, this process of myelination, where the neurons become encased by myelin, this white substance, and it acts as an insulator.
Okay.
So when the electrical signals go through your brain, they keep repeating, I play music, I play music, I play music. So the myelin forms around those neurons, and it becomes easier and more second nature to us.
Wow.
And so after a while, within these 7 years, those pathways, those particular activities that we engage in that we found were good for us, they wind up becoming like super highways for our electricity in our brains. And it's amazing to know myelination stops at age 7. It slows down dramatically. Again, it picks up a little during adolescence, and then it stops.
Wow.
And so if you as an adult want to learn something new and become amazing at something, you cannot build a super highway anymore. At most, it's like you get a machete and you get to chop through the jungle and you can just carve out a little path, which is why you see kids learn and they suck it up so easily. But why for adults, it's so hard for us to, we learn tips and methods, and so we can use our intelligence to help us, but still we'll never develop it. So I call those super highways, if you will, those myelinated sets and paths of neurons, tigers. Why? Because they love to act. They love to eat. In this case, you would eat music, if that was what got myelinated. You would eat administration and organizing things, or you would eat being funny, right? So there's some people who might be just hysterical, and we see them like also popular comedians or actors or things like that. And they just have this knack, and it comes so naturally to them. And that's what it is. So those are tigers, and they eat the activities that enable them to get engaged.
Wow. Okay. Wow. That's interesting, because if you think about it too, I'm not a big cat fan, but if I was going to have a cat, the tiger would be the one I'd want. They're beautiful. They're large. They're, of course they could turn around and eat me, but hey,
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
I also say that. I say, if you don't feed your tigers, they eat you.
Yeah.
So for example, if you've got a really big musical tiger or a really big creative and visual tiger, because they team up with each other. Right. So if it's like visual and creative, let's just say, so you would know if those are big, if you always you've done it since you were a kid, you start pulling out a pen and drawing or coloring, or when you're taking photos, you're marking them up and making, adjusting them so they look great. Your interior design looks fine. Or maybe if someone wears makeup, they're going to be really good at that, or accessorizing. So if you don't do those things, let's say you're stuck in a job in a kind of boring area, boring looking space, it's going to eat away at you inside. And
Right.
something's going to be saying like, draw, do something, it's going to be like, ugh, kind of pushing you. And that frustration is going to build up so much that, well, when I say it eats away at you, it's going to release cortisol and
Right.
like a stressor in your body, which actually does technically eat away at you.
Wow. And that's what people forget is, not allowing that natural ability to come out can, like you said, eat away at you so much that it affects you, your health and your mental mindset.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about how that works into a person's life, say their personal balance and self-balance, because I think that's critical.
Great question. I mean, you just said it. What happens at that point when they get out of balance because of this? I call it being misaligned, right?
Okay.
So what's going on in the brain at that point? When you do activities, when you feed your tigers, right? There's this process of happy chemicals being released in the brain. Dr. Loretta Bruning talks about this. She's got a great book called Your Happy Chemicals, and in it, she basically says that when you do a particular activity that you enjoy doing, and even when you think about it, there's a dopamine release. So that's like this, I'm going to get to do this. I'm going to get to do something that I really enjoy. So that's kind of like, the tiger that sees the gazelle and just says, oh, I'm going to pounce on that thing. So you feel good just thinking about it. And also while you're doing it, then you start to do it. And while you're doing it, other people are saying, hey, Bob, wow, terrific. You're really good at that. So that's serotonin. So serotonin is the status factor, the thing, like it's like an emotional regulator, and you feel good about yourself. That's self-confidence.
Right.
Then you feel confident, you want to do it more. And then people want to be around you. They're like, hey, hey, let's go for lunch and let's hang out. And that's oxytocin. So when people pat you on the back, they give you a hug, they want to spend time with you. So that's another neurochemical, a happy chemical that's being released. And so our reptilian brain is driving us to keep getting little releases of those things. And so when you're feeding the tigers, doing that stuff, it's like a positive cycle that happens. But when you're not, or when you're doing something that's not a super highway, it's not a big tiger, but it's more like one of those like paths that you cut with a machete, like a small. So if your administrative is low, let's just say, for example, it's not a big tiger, and you have to do administrative work. So you don't look forward to it. As soon as you think about it, there's not dopamine release, it's fright. It feels like you're going to die. So cortisol gets released, right? When you're bad at doing it, people are like, Bob, what the heck? You just, missed another meeting. You forgot about that. So now your self-esteem goes down. So again, you're not getting the serotonin, you're getting more cortisol. Then nobody wants to be around you, right? I forget. Well, no, I can't go to lunch with you. And you know that like, they don't like you. And then you start to you get lonely and you get isolated, and some more cortisol releases. So then what happens at this point, you're not getting happiness from these happy chemicals from a natural source.
Right.
So you seek out other sources. You drink another cup of coffee that you don't need, right? And that kind of perks you up. It will release some of these. You eat some chocolate or some carbs, or you smoke, or you drink, or you stimulate, or you start, you might buy things. It's what I call retail therapy. This belief that, oh yeah, when I buy that thing, I'm going to be happy.
Right.
Or you play status games. Did you hear about Marianne over there? So you start to feel good as a result of it. All of these things are toxic. They don't actually help you in your life. They don't bring you anything of value. They just put a Band-Aid on top of that cortisol and the lack of the happy chemicals. So that is imbalance.
Okay.
That is a state of dis-ease or lack of health. And then that's going to have smoking will bring you lung cancer, and too much sugar is going to bring you, diabetes. And you keep buying things. I have one friend all the time, whenever he's stressed out, he buys a knife on Amazon, right? So he's got this collection of knives that he doesn't need. And, it's not, it can hurt financially when you buy them. Yeah. You try to, use retail therapy to make yourself feel better.
And that's something, because those are the effects people, like you said, it's the things they don't really want, but it's comfortable. Like you said, that survival mindset takes you back to that. How can people try to get away from that, if you will? I know it's ingrained in our brain that survival mindset, because there isn't a real, if you will, tiger attacking us from behind anymore.
Right. Exactly. Well, that's why I love the title of your podcast, Encouragement Engineering,
Yeah.
because this actually is all about engineering. And by engineering, I mean by, number one, understanding what your tigers are. You first need to understand which are the big ones and the medium ones and the small ones.
Right.
That's the first thing, because you might be looking at an influencer and saying, wow, look at her. She's just incredible. She's got this big following and she's fun to watch and she's making tons of money. Oh my gosh, I just wish. And so she might have a really big entertaining, linguistic, interpersonal tiger, and maybe entrepreneurial on top of that. And if you don't have big tigers in that area and you try to fashion yourself after her, you could do the courses, you could do the classes, you can pay a coach, but you're still hacking away with a machete in the woods. And you're not going to get the super high. She's got like 4 super highways. That doesn't mean you can't be happy and successful, but it means that your tigers might be different ones that you might need to put together in a different way. Maybe you're more logical and more visual and more protective and more linguistic. So those might work well together as a programmer or somebody in cyber, in like cybersecurity, so the protective plus the logical plus the linguistic, like those would do you, maybe you're low interpersonal, and that's fine. Small tigers don't mean weaknesses. It just means that that's not a piece that you would play with. It doesn't have to be like, pawns don't mean weak. Sometimes pawns can be devastating. So here, you need to figure out which are, so this is the first part, figuring out which are the big, medium, and small tigers. The second part is then aligning those tigers with work and activities that feed your particular set of tigers. And that could be a job. It could be side work, a gig.
Right.
And it also could be a leisure activity. It could be something that you just do for fun.
Right.
Tigers don't care about whether they're making money or not.
Right.
I'll say that right away. I have a big musical tiger. I've said from the beginning, right? I wanted to be a rock star. So and I have right here on my desk, I have my little keyboard. And for me, I've got to do something musical just about every day, or that musical tiger will eat me.
Right.
But I'm not making money with it.
Yeah.
But it has its little space in my life, and I make time for it, because when I do it, what it does is that the dopamine comes out. I feel good about it. I might share my music with some people. Oh my God, thanks for sharing that with me, and blah, blah, blah. I feel good. And that's all it needs to do.
Right. And that's a reminder to people too, that, like you said, it doesn't have to be your sole source of income. That doesn't mean that you're not successful with your innate tigers, if you will. That's a great reminder for people, because we can all have, different talents. I've seen people that are, that don't talk much at work, seem like they're introverts. And on the weekend, they're preaching in front of a 300 person church, things like that. So we all have our talents.
Exactly. Bob, you could think about it like this. You could think about it like a menu, right?
Yeah.
So when you go to a restaurant, you've got appetizers, and then you've got the main course, and you have dessert. So sometimes you order different ways, but let's just say like you took a standard and you did a little appetizer, you had your main course and dessert. And so nutrition, right? You would expect to get most of your nutrition from the main course, maybe a little from the appetizers, because there's some fried stuff with that. It might not be all that nutritious. And dessert, well, you wouldn't be expecting to get any nutrition from that, some chocolate mousse or something, right? It's just fun. With work, it's the same thing. You would, if you can, the more big tigers you can get in your main job, then you stand a much better chance of earning more and filling up the majority of your day with big tigers that are eating a lot and so on. So that's why there's a benefit to that. But if you can't, it doesn't mean that the show is over. It just means that take some of those other tigers and get a gig. So as you were saying, maybe it could be, or it could be coaching, or it could be teaching, or it might be selling stuff on Etsy.
Right.
And then the third way is that you might have some that are just desserts, they're hobbies, and you do them just for fun. So that's the message that I want to bring to people. The engineering part is identifying the tigers and then figuring out which ones I can load into my job, which ones I can load into part-time gigs, or which ones I can bring into the hobbies or leisure activity.
And that's a a good way to look at it, because it gives us opportunity. I think that's what most people look for today. I mean, they get inundated with the day-to-day grind, if you will, but we got to look at those opportunities, and we all have capabilities to take advantage of those opportunities, but we got to keep our
Yes.
head up and our eyes open to see those. How do you help people maybe overcome those fears? Because that's a change for people, and people are
Yeah.
fearful of change. How do you help them overcome that fear?
The way you overcome fear is to be situated in your tigers. And what I mean by this, and this is a really cool word that I found when I was in India. So there's this Sanskrit word, which is called swasta. And swasta is made of two parts. Swa means self, and sta means to be situated in. So together, it means to be situated in yourself. The interesting thing is that the word swasta means healthy.
Wow.
And
Okay.
what I understood by that is the ancients' understanding of health was not your body mass index, was not
Right.
your blood pressure level, it was not your cholesterol count.
Right.
It was the degree to which you were situated in yourself, because you can already sense right now, like my educative is a big tiger, my intrapersonal, like I tend to think deeply and I self-reflect. My entertaining is also a little bit up there. So my linguistic. So when I put those together, I'm really situated in myself in this moment. And when I am, what's going on? The blood is flowing, the happy chemicals are flowing, the electrical signals are flowing, and I get into that space and I have confidence. I know that this will work.
Right.
And so I know that I can always bank on this. I can always count on this. So if, for example, like I'm late or something's going wrong in my day and blah, 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 and I know that I have to like come to this podcast interview, I know I'm going to nail it.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's like I'm a gymnast who's got massive feet, you know? It's like, I just know I'm going to land on those feet every time. The same is not true for me with like numbers, like logical and the administrative stuff. I did not get that myelinated neuro field when I was a kid with organizing. So if I have to do things which deal with numbers and deal with accounting or deal with, and it's a rush at the last minute, I have tiny feet and I will stumble and fall if I'm under pressure. And so therefore, the confidence comes from understanding what my big, medium, and small tigers are. So I know where I can trust myself with those super highways. No matter what happens, I'll always be able to deliver. That's where the confidence comes from.
And that's always a good scenario, because none of us are perfect at everything by any means, or we're not perfect at all. But I hear you. I mean, there's certain things where, you know, I'll avoid it and push it off. And then when I have to do it, it's begrudging, or like you said, your mind's not centered. And you brought in a good point. And I don't know if you noticed why you were saying that. You were doing this. It's like you're centered on those self tigers, those like you said, centered, and you were doing this. And notice, if you, those watching, you notice he was sitting up straight and he was centered on that action. And that's where your strength comes from, is knowing your value, knowing who you are, that centers you on those values so you can achieve those great things you want to do. I don't know if you realized you were doing that, but I saw it. I was like, wow, that's cool.
and well, here's another interesting thing that I've noticed, which is that when I'm aligned, when I have these tigers in alignment, my stomach is relaxed and I'm breathing from my stomach. And you know, if you've ever done any kind of yoga or meditation class, they'll say, relax yourself, breathe from your diaphragm, breathe from your stomach. And because when you do that, you get a full breath.
Right.
When you're tense and your stomach is tight, you're not getting a full breath. So when your stomach is relaxed and you're breathing like that, then you get more oxygen, oxygenate your blood, get rid of the toxicity. You will burn more calories just by, you know, being within that, in that space. And this is something that I've noticed with myself when I do more work or activities throughout the day, or let's just say over the course of the week, and I've got it lined up. My engineering was really well done and well planned. I can pretty much eat what I want without having to overdo the exercise, and I don't get out of shape. I don't really get like, and my body takes on weight very easily. And I can tell when my tigers are misaligned, because suddenly I'll feel like, ugh, I'm getting heavier and I feel like I'm eating the same stuff, but the weight is coming on. So that comes back to that, you know, swasta, being centered in yourself and being healthy. And I've seen that, which is when I'm like that, then I feel healthy and I'm burning the calories. And interestingly, in the East, there's far less of this pressure to have to be, to have like your body mass index of a certain amount and having six-pack abs. This is really a Western kind of thing. Here, it's people view you much more in terms of your overall energy, and they're not as
Wow.
they're not as hung up about having a little bit extra.
Right.
And so I just want to share that being able to just be myself without having to think about that and worry about that, and just being able to enjoy what I do and pretty much eat kind of what I want, that to me is a much better way of trying to live a life that I can only eat so many calories, and then I have to
Right.
do this. And then I'm always in this kind of like rigid, tense
Right.
situation. And I'm probably, my blood pressure is probably high. You see this all the time, right?
Yeah.
People,
Oh, yeah.
people
Yeah.
that he was running on the treadmill
Yeah.
and he had a heart attack. I don't know.
Yeah.
His blood pressure, everything was fine. All his vitals were okay. We can't figure out what went wrong. Well,
Right.
maybe that person wasn't centered.
Right. And you bring up a good point between cultures, because the East and the West, I mean, we're offered so many things that are just hazardous if you look at the ingredients of what they're made out of in our diets. In the East, it's more natural products. It's more grains and more, natural grown items, greens and things like that. It does make a difference what we put into our bodies, garbage in, garbage out. And like you said, that changes your mindset so that your activities are going faster and you're burning those calories. It allows your body to be self-managed, if you will, just by what you're putting into your body and into your mind.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, great. Now, the other thing is, I noticed you had something on. I was reading one of your blogs, I believe it was, and it talked about your how you help coaches. And I was curious, how can you, with coaches, parents, maybe and other people, help their clients to see their potential? I think that's a big one, because so many times we get the woe is me scenarios, and they just don't see the potential that they have. How do you help people to do that?
So I'm going to share a really cool quote that comes from the Vedas. These are the traditional books and scriptures of India that are like thousands of years old. And it goes like this: there's not a letter that cannot be made into a mantra. There is not an herb or a plant that cannot be made into a medicine. And there is not a person without a valuable quality. But what's rare is somebody who can find the quality of that thing or of that person and to bring it out. And so therefore, whether it's parents who are raising their children, or whether it's a coach or a teacher or a mentor or a boss who needs to bring out those qualities, they really have an exalted position in society.
Right.
Because when a parent says that you're useless and you're worthless, or a mentor or somebody or a boss says something like that to an individual because they're not performing the way that they want them to perform, that doesn't do them any good. So the real enlightened guide will be able to look into that person's capacities and into their tigers and say, okay, these are your super highways. These are your big tigers. These are the ones that you need to bring out, and to give them that guidance to do that. Now, what I tell people is, just like on the airplanes, when it says, in case there's a sudden drop in cabin pressure, oxygen mask will deploy. If you're traveling with children or the elderly, put your oxygen mask on first before helping them. So what I say is, please first know your tigers before you start to help other people. When you analyze your own and you understand it, then you'll be in a position actually to support other people and then help them to bring it out.
And that goes into that time of self-reflection. I think that's so important, because we, especially in Western society, we're going 900 miles a minute, every different direction. We don't take the time to take that time to center ourselves, to find out who we really are. And we want to look at, things of, what happened when we were little, blah, 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 but focus on who you are now. What happened then is in the past. I mean,
it's something like this, that there will be experiences that have shaped us. That experience is no longer here, but the shape of what's that was developed is here with us. So for example, you might develop an entertaining nature, this capacity to joke around, etc. And it might have been because your parents didn't give you much attention when you were young and you needed to get their attention. Or Maybe a parent was extremely sick, always in the hospital, and it was very traumatic for you, and you had to take care of them and to protect them. So your protective tiger or your healing tiger evolves as a result of that.
Wow.
So what I want to say is that if there are issues that are built up that need to be dealt with emotionally, et cetera, that's something that a therapist, of course, is the right person to, whether a psychologist or psychiatrist or psychotherapist, those are the right people to help you deal with that particular incident or trauma. But you can, the tiger, that superhighway, is there.
Yeah.
And you can actively and positively and meaningfully engage that present tiger in something that's going to feed it. So that's what I want to say. Even though the wound might be there, something developed out of it that you can make use of in a valuable way now.
Yeah. And that's important to know. That's a building block of who you are, that it is a benefit that, like you said, it's just engineering your life to take advantage of that. It's engineering your current situation, current story to go in a positive direction. I think that's always interesting. Great ideas. It's always, I really appreciate, what you offer for people. How can people get a hold of you? Where can they find you, Steven? Sure. Tell us about that.
I try to make it easy. feedyourtigers.com. So if you go to feedyourtigers.com, right there on that page, you'll find access to a free test that I have. It's an assessment that will help you figure out which are your big, medium, and small tigers. And once you've done that, then there are additional tools that you can make use of to figure out how you can do your engineering and how you're going to feed your tigers, whether it's for your career or if it's for hobbies or things like that, or if you're a parent and you're looking to help your child to go forward and then figure out how they should pick their major or the particular career or course of study. So this is the beginning process. That's where it starts. And then I have additional courses, and I've got some courses for guidance professionals so they can also help people. Once they've got their oxygen masks on, they can also help other people do that. So feedyourtigers.com. That's where you would go to find
what he didn't mention was he's got his podcast episode on there too. So listen to those. You get some good information on those as well, and some blogs. Great information. We'll put all that in the show notes so people can get a hold of you and follow you more on what you're doing. Great concepts. And I like the idea of the tiger. It's one cat I really like. So I appreciate that.
Those tigers,
yeah. Being from Detroit, their baseball team is the Detroit Tigers. So, I always like that. But Steven, I want to thank you for being a guest on the Encouragement Engineering podcast. I really appreciate your time today. And thank you for the information.
Thanks so much, Bob.
All right. You have a great day.